The Independent Electoral Commission, or IEC, says it is pleased with the turnout at Wednesday's by-elections where wards were gained and lost by various political parties. The average turnout stands at 37.8% compared to 38.7% in the past 4 years. These elections were a litmus test for the IEC ahead of next year's local government elections amid the coronavirus pandemic. IEC Chairperson Glen Mashinini joins us now to give us a bit of a diagnosis of how the elections went. Great to have you, Chair. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Leanne, and good morning to your listeners or your viewers.
Historically, by-elections don't have the greatest turnout, as I mentioned, usually 38%. So we saw this week 37.8%. I mean, it's a percentage point lower, but I mean, talk to us about that. Were you satisfied with the turnout?
Very much so. We're very pleased. Thanks, Leanne. In fact, interestingly, because this is the average turnout. In some areas, like in the Eastern Cape, I think it's in Port Shepstone or so, the turnout was at about 75%. So we have variances in different provinces. I think the worst province on average was in Gauteng with respect to the voter turnout. But the other provinces did quite well. So we were very happy. And in some areas we had rains and so on, but the turnout still held quite well. Yeah, so we're grateful and we thank all the South Africans that did heed our call for registering their choices.
Yeah, and that certainly is a big accolade to South Africans, because you talk about some of the circumstances surrounding the elections, and that including COVID-19. A lot of people sharing experiences of what it was like actually going into a voting station and seeing the officials head to toe in PPE. It was like you walked into a surgery, never mind a voting booth. Talk to us. Is this what we can expect going forward? Was this almost like a rehearsal for next year?
Absolutely, Leanne. In fact, that's why we are saying this is actually a dry run. We've not been able to hold any by-elections since March. And as soon as the level 1 was declared, we were in a position then to prepare so that we can clear the backlog. But on the other side, we have been actually engaged with our counterparts throughout the world, getting the lessons as to how then do they conduct the elections, or how do they manage to get the elections during the period of COVID. And as we all know, we don't want that the elections become a super spreader, and we value the lives of the employees of the Commission as well as the members of the public. So really visiting the voting stations, being there on the ground, experiencing it, seeing it throughout the various stations that one visited in the last few days, I was very proud of our institution, that the Electoral Commission of South Africa remains one of the leading lights in our country. And so we're very much grateful that we had this opportunity to have a dry run. We'll still be running others, and we'll be taking a few more lessons. But yes, we're very pleased.
Yeah. Glen, in terms of anyone arriving at one of the voting centres and was not able to cast their vote for various factors, perhaps maybe having a temperature or not being allowed into the voting booth, did you have any of those instances? If so, how do you get around a situation like that? Obviously, they're still eligible to vote, but if they were turned away, how do they go about that?
We don't have the temperature checking capability. And so, there wasn't any incident reported that I'm aware of. However, I think if somebody is not feeling well or declares that they're not well or something, then we would apply our our first aid procedures.
Okay, so you were not checking people's temperatures as they went in to vote. Isn't that not an added layer of a precaution that you should institute? Because, there are a lot of people gathered there. I'm thinking ahead. Perhaps maybe not for the by-elections, because, as you say, it's a lower turnout. But going ahead, do you not think that would be a standard to actually have temperature recording before people go into voting stations?
Yes, I think those are the things based on the resources available to us. We would have to be looking into that. But there are issues of the implications. I mean, in informal settlement, what would you be in a position to do with somebody whose temperature is problematic? So there's, we relied more on the masks and as well as the sanitization of everybody coming through. And I think it has helped, but we are reviewing and we'll be assessing some of the issues. And largely, as I said, Leanne, the issue of the resources available is also another question that's ahead of us.
Okay, let's just quickly, before we talk to results, because I think South Africans are fully aware of the results, but nonetheless, let's talk to them in a bit. I just want to talk to you about some of the protests and disruptions that took place. As far as we know, there were only 2 protests at different ward stations, and that was sort of having the police come in to control the situation. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about that.
Yes, thank you, Leanne. We're very much grateful for the police for the job that they've done in making sure that there's no hindrance to our activities. We did, however, experience some disruptions in areas like Soweto, in Naledi, and in the Eastern Cape. Leanne, I think it's time we actually look into this phenomenon that the conduct of election is a constitutional imperative. And we have rights as a country, and those rights are being exercised by the citizens quite extensively. On the other hand, what people miss is that there are also responsibilities that go along with the rights. Now, in the case of people disrupting an election, they are also risking that they are transgressing the laws and they are breaching other people's rights. So peaceful protests are most welcome, but disrupting the activities and especially threatening the officers of the Electoral Commission, we really take an exception on that. And we continue to urge that the police must actually enforce the law, because it is an unlawful act to disrupt any officer of the Electoral Commission. We are not objectionable to people voicing their own concerns, but I think we need to find a balance as a country. Overall, the elections went smoothly, incident-free. In fact, it was a festive mood in a number of areas that one visited. All the political parties playing and blasting their music, having a nice braai, and so on and so forth. So we're very happy, but we will continue to counsel and advise that let us understand what the rights mean all the time.
We understand, obviously, that you as the IEC are the overseer of the election, and you're here just to talk exactly about the results. But let's dig a little deeper, and perhaps from past experience, some of the telling signs that come out of a by-election. We saw the DA lose 9 wards to other political parties, and this basically continues the party's decline in support since the 2016 local elections. In its stronghold of the Western Cape, the party actually retained 8 of the 11 wards contested, but lost 1 to newcomer, the Good Party. This is quite interesting, because if we can pause there for a second, perhaps talk about how the smaller parties are also beginning to get a share of the vote inside the communities. We can also see, we could bring that as an example in a lot of other communities, not just the Good Party. There's also many more. Talk to us about the emergence of smaller parties in these by-elections.
Well, I would say probably it's not so much the emergence of smaller parties. It's largely indicative of the robustness of our democracy. And this is good for our country, that we can see that no political party can rest. It's important that it is in touch, and it is important that it continues to appeal to its supporters. So this phenomenon of smaller political parties or individuals coming through, it's beginning to tell us that the previous dominating position that certain parties can hold the positions without losing or being challenged and losing is something that perhaps going forward we'll see more of that fading away, where you will have more players coming through. I mean, we've seen the recent Constitutional Court judgment regarding the issue of independence. So it may perhaps be a telltale sign, but I think we should leave that to the political analysts. Ours is just to reference the contestations.
I completely understand that it is hard for you to give any kind of opinion on this. So it is a difficult situation for you to be in. I mean, we do again see something like the Patriotic Alliance, who have won one ward, the Good Party, as I mentioned, Al Jama also winning another party. So it's interesting to see how this is actually happening. In terms of instances of vote irregularities in the counting process, anything that you're aware of? Were all parties in agreement with the results? Any contestations? Talk to us about that.
Yes, the reports I've received, because I only arrived back late in the afternoon, the reports I had received, we still had not received objections and all of that. So, but we are waiting to see if there are any concerns, and we'll make announcements if there are any new developments.
All right.
I mean, these are still our preliminary results.
They certainly are. When do we expect the final results to come through?
I think we should be in the next few days be in a position to finalize everything as soon as we know there aren't any objections, because the window for objecting is still open. So we would be in a position to deal with those issues. But at this stage, we believe, already we've reached more or less the finality.
All right. We'll leave it there. Glen, thanks for talking to us. Glen Mashinini is the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, talking about Super Wednesday, the by-elections that took place this week. And this, of course, the IEC oversees. They were very happy with them, a good indication of what to expect going forward. And just the voter turnout, only 1% less than usual. So that's quite a good number, considering the circumstances that we find ourselves in as a country at the moment. All right, let's take a break.